Paradoxes of time. There is nothing in Einstein's theories of relativity to rule out time travel, although the very notion of traveling to the past violates one of the most fundamental premises of physics, that of causality. With the laws of cause and effect out the window, there naturally arises a number of inconsistencies associated with time travel, and listed here are some of those paradoxes which have given both scientist and time travel movie buffs alike more than a few sleepless nights over the years. We know paradoxes have happened and will again. There is one group that hope to use a paradox to fix a paradox that's about to happen. In any case, let's explore the paradoxes of time. The time travel paradoxes which follow fall into two broad categories, namely 1. Closed causal loops, such as the predestination paradox and the bootstrap paradox, which involve a self-existing time loop in which cause and effect run in a repeating circle, but is also internally consistent with the timeline's history, and 2. Consistency paradoxes, such as the grandfather paradox and other similar variants such as the Hitler paradox, and Polchinski's paradox, which generate a number of timeline inconsistencies related to the possibility of altering the past. 1. Predestination paradox. A predestination paradox occurs when the actions of a person traveling back in time ultimately causes the event he is trying to prevent to occur. He then becomes trapped inside a temporal causality loop in which event 1 in the past influences event 2, time travel to the past, which then causes event 1 to occur, with this circular loop of events thus ensuring that history is not altered by the time traveler's journey to the past. In other words, any attempts to stop something from happening in the past will simply lead to the cause itself, instead of stopping it. This paradox suggests that things are always destined to turn out the same way, and that whatever has happened must happen. Sound complicated? Imagine that your lover dies in a hit-and-run car accident, and you travel back in time to save her from her fate, only to find that on your way to the accident you are the one who accidentally runs her over. Therefore, you cannot change the past, and furthermore, anyone attempting to do so may literally find themselves trapped within a repeating loop of time. One way of dealing with this type of paradox is to assume that the version of events experienced are already built into a self-consistent version of reality, and that a time traveler trying to alter the past will only end up fulfilling his role in creating history, not altering it. Examples of predestination paradoxes in the movies include Time Crimes, 2007, The Time Traveler's Wife, 2009, and Predestination, 2014. 2. Bootstrap paradox. A bootstrap paradox is a type of paradox in which an object, person, or piece of information sent back in time results in an infinite loop where the object has no discernible origin, and exists without ever being created. It is also known as an ontological paradox, as ontology is a branch of philosophy concerned with the nature of being, or existence. George Lucas traveling back in time and giving himself the scripts for the Star Wars movies which he then goes on to direct and gain great fame for would create a bootstrap paradox involving information, as the scripts have no true point of creation or origin. A bootstrap paradox involving a person could be, say, a 20-year-old male time traveler who goes back 21 years, meets a woman, has an affair, and returns home 3 months later without knowing the woman was pregnant. Her child grows up to be the 20-year-old time traveler, who travels back 21 years through time, meets a woman, and so on. American science fiction writer Robert Heinlein wrote a strange short story involving a sexual paradox in his 1959 classic All You Zombies. These ontological paradoxes imply that the future, present, and past are not defined, thus giving scientists an obvious problem on how to then pinpoint the origin of anything, a word customarily referring to the past, but now rendered meaningless. Further questions arise as to how the object/data was created, and by whom. Nevertheless, Einstein's field equations allow for the possibility of closed time loops, with Kip Thorne the first theoretical physicist to recognize traversable wormholes and backwards time travel as being theoretically possible under certain conditions. Examples of bootstrap paradoxes in the movies include Somewhere in Time, 1980, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, 1989, The Terminator movies, and Time Lapse, 2014. 3. Grandfather paradox. This time paradox gives rise to a self-inconsistent solution, because if you traveled to the past and killed your grandfather, you would never have been born and would not have been able to travel to the past. A paradox. Let's say you did decide to kill your grandfather because he created a dynasty that ruined the world. You figure if you knock him off before he meets your grandmother, the whole family line, including you, will vanish and the world will be a better place. According to theoretical physicists, the situation could play out as follows. Timeline protection hypothesis: you pop back in time, walk up to him, and point a revolver at his head. You pull the trigger but the gun fails to fire. Click. 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 The bullets in the chamber have dents in the firing caps. You point the gun elsewhere and pull the trigger. Bang. Point it at your grandfather. Click. 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 So you try another method to kill him, but that only leads to scars that in later life he attributed to the world's worst mugger. You can do many things as long as they're not fatal until you are chased off by a policeman. Multiple universes hypothesis: you pop back in time, walk up to him, and point a revolver at his head. You pull the trigger and boom. The deed is done. You return to the present but you never existed here. Everything about you has been erased, including your family, friends, home, possessions, bank account, and history. You've entered a timeline where you never existed. Scientists entertain the possibility that you have now created an alternate timeline or entered a parallel universe. 4. Let's kill Hitler paradox. Similar to the grandfather paradox, which paradoxically prevents your own birth, the killing Hitler paradox erases your own reason for going back in time to kill him. Furthermore, while killing Grandpa might have a limited butterfly effect, killing Hitler would have far-reaching consequences for everyone in the world, even if only for the fact you studied him in school. The paradox itself arises from the idea that if you were successful, then there would be no reason to time travel in the first place. If you killed Hitler, then none of his actions would trickle down through history and cause you to want to make the attempt. By far the best treatment for this notion occurred in a Twilight Zone episode called Cradle of Darkness that sums up the difficulties involved in trying to change history, with another being an episode of Doctor Who called Let's Kill Hitler. 5. Polchinski's paradox. American theoretical physicist Joseph Polchinski proposed a time paradox scenario in which a billiard ball enters a wormhole, and emerges out the other end in the past just in time to collide with its younger version and stop it going into the wormhole in the first place. Polchinski's paradox is taken seriously by physicists, as there is nothing in Einstein's general relativity to rule out the possibility of time travel, closed time-like curves, CTCs, or tunnels through space-time. Furthermore, it has the advantage of being based upon the laws of motion, without having to refer to the indeterministic concept of free will, and so presents a better research method for scientists to think about the paradox. When Joseph Polchinski proposed the paradox, he had Novikov's self-consistency principle in mind, which basically states that while time travel is possible, time paradoxes are forbidden. However, a number of solutions have been formulated to avoid the inconsistencies Polchinski suggested, which essentially involves the billiard ball delivering a blow which changes its younger version's course, but not enough to stop it entering the wormhole. This solution is related to the timeline protection hypothesis, which states that a probability distortion would occur in order to prevent a paradox from happening. This also helps explain why if you tried to time travel and murder your grandfather, something will always happen to make that impossible, thus preserving a consistent version of history. Are self-fulfilling prophecies paradoxes? A self-fulfilling prophecy is only a causality loop when the prophecy is truly known to happen and events in the future cause effects in the past, otherwise the phenomenon is not so much a paradox as a case of cause and effect. Say, for instance, an authority figure states that something is inevitable, proper, and true, convincing everyone through persuasive style. People, completely convinced through rhetoric, begin to behave as if the prediction were already true, and consequently bring it about through their actions. This might be seen best by an example where someone convincingly states, "High-speed magnetic levitation trains will dominate as the best form of transportation from the 21st century onward. Jet travel, relying on diminishing fuel supplies, will be reserved for ocean crossing, and local flights will be a thing of the past." People now start planning on building networks of high-speed trains that run on electricity. Infrastructure gears up to supply the needed parts, and the prediction becomes true not because it was truly inevitable, though it is a smart idea, but because people behaved as if it were true. It even works on a smaller scale, the scale of individuals. The basic methodology for all those self-help books out in the world is that if you modify your thinking that you are successful, money, career, dating, etc., then with the strengthening of that belief you start to behave like a successful person. People begin to notice and start to treat you like a successful person. It is a reinforcement/feedback loop, and you actually become successful by behaving as if you were. Are time paradoxes inevitable? The butterfly effect is a reference to chaos theory, where seemingly trivial changes can have huge cascade reactions over long periods of time. Consequently, the timeline corruption hypothesis states that time paradoxes are an unavoidable consequence of time travel, and even insignificant changes may be enough to alter history completely. In one story, a paleontologist, with the help of a time travel device, travels back to the Jurassic period to get photographs of Stegosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Ceratosaurus, and Allosaurus amongst other dinosaurs. He knows he can't take samples, so he just takes magnificent pictures from the fixed platform that is positioned precisely to not change anything about the environment. His assistant is about to pick a long blade of grass, but he stops him and explains how nothing must change because of their presence. They finish what they are doing and return to the present, but everything is gone. They reappear in a wild world with no humans, and no signs that they ever existed. They fall to the floor of their platform, the only man-made thing in the whole world, and lament why? We didn't change anything. And there on the heel of the scientist's shoe is a crushed butterfly. The Butterfly Effect is also a movie, starring Ashton Kutcher as Evan Treborn and Amy Smart as Kylie Miller, where a troubled man has had blackouts during his youth, later explained by him traveling back into his own past and taking charge of his younger body briefly. The movie explores the issue of changing the timeline and how unintended consequences can propagate. Stay paranoid, my friends. Again. There is one group that hope to use a paradox to fix a paradox that's about to happen. In any case, let's explore the paradoxes of time. The time travel paradoxes which follow fall into two broad categories, namely 1. Closed causal loops, such paradoxes of time. There is nothing in Einstein's theories of relativity to rule out time travel, although the very notion of traveling to the past violates one of the most fundamental premises of physics, that of causality. As the predestination paradox and the bootstrap paradox, which involve a self-existing time loop in which cause and effect run in a repeating circle, but is also internally consistent with the timeline's history, and 2. Consistency paradoxes, such as the grandfather paradox and other similar variants. With the laws of cause and effect out the window, there naturally arises a number of inconsistencies associated with time travel, and listed here are some of those paradoxes which have given both scientist and time travel movie buffs alike more than a few sleepless nights over the years. We know paradoxes have happened and